This is Quentin Simon.
At about a year and a half old, a little bit over that, 20 months. Like all children, he was blameless, he was innocent, and he was beautiful. And like all children, he was totally defenseless, totally and completely dependent on the adults in his life to take care of him and to look out for his safety. And the evidence in this case will show that the defendant violated that trust, that most basic, sacred trust of a parent. In the middle of the night, she killed him, her own son, got in her car with his body, drove to a dumpster, and threw him away like a piece of trash. She would go home, go to sleep like everything was normal, and wake up the next morning and report it to the police as an abduction. I woke up, my front door was open, and my child was missing. Now the story started to fall apart pretty quickly because of good, solid police work. But she would go on to tell a series of evolving lies over several weeks, only moving from one lie to the next as the police picked apart the first lie and presented her with the evidence that made the first lie untenable. So now it's time to move on to lie number 2, and 3, and 4. And as they're doing this with her, they're also searching for his body, which they ultimately discovered about 6 weeks after his disappearance in a local landfill, in pieces, unfortunately. And as a result of all of that police work and investigative efforts, which I think you'll be quite proud of when you hear about them in detail, the defendant is charged with his murder. So that's sort of the 50,000-foot view, the bluff, the bottom line up front for the military folks here. A little more detail on what happened, what the evidence will show. The 2 days that we're primarily concerned with here are October 4th and 5th of 2022, specifically the night of October 4th, moving into the morning of October 5th. At that time, the defendant is living here on the west side of Savannah. He most recently lived in North Carolina, where she had met and lived with her most recent boyfriend. And some months before October of 2022, they had moved down and were living in this house. The house belonged to the defendant's mother, Billy Joe Howell, her husband, Thomas Howell, who is not the defendant's father, but is her stepfather. Also living in the house, the defendant's brother, Paul Simon. They have the same mother and the same father. And Daniel Youngkin, her boyfriend from North Carolina, and the defendant's 3 children. October of 2022, she has 3 children by 3 different men. The oldest is Zane Wharton. I think he was roughly about 3 years old at the time. Zane has been through a lot with her. He's her firstborn son, and I expect you'll hear testimony that she considered him her ride or die. That's her guy. Sky Youngkin is an infant on the far right there. That is her youngest child by Daniel Youngkin. And in the middle was Quentin. Quentin was her child by a man named Henry Bubba Moss Jr. You'll hear that she'd had kind of a tumultuous relationship with Mr. Moss, that they had split before she even knew she was pregnant with Quentin, and that he initially didn't even believe that she was pregnant when she told him, and that he was never part of Quentin's life at all. And I expect you'll hear some testimony about the way that background influenced the way that she treated Quentin. But you're supposed to love all your kids equally, you're supposed to treat them all the same. I expect you'll hear some testimony that didn't happen. She treated Quentin differently, and not in a good way. Here's the house from the street. Now, the defendant, Daniel, and the 3 children lived in a bedroom right through this front door. think there was some sort of addition on the house at one point. This bedroom that they live in appears to be like a converted one-time living room or something like that. If you step through that front door, this is what you see. You see a couch in the foreground. You see a desk behind that. And then on the far wall there, you see a bed. That's the defendant and Daniel Youngkin's bed. If you pan to the right, you'll see a closet door here. And then it's hard to make out in this picture, but beyond this closet door is a door into a bathroom that then feeds into the dining room. And that is the only way to get from this room to the main body of the house. You see a race car bed there? That's where Zane slept. We further pan to the right. You can see that race car bed. And then if you pan into that right-hand corner, you see this pack and play. That's where Quentin slept. That was Quentin's bed. That's sort of pack and play. That's where Quentin slept. That was Quentin's bed. That sort of sets the scene as to who's living in this house. Before we come back to the morning of October 4th, I want to talk to you about what the evidence is going to show as far as what's the biggest thing going on in the defendant's life. And the biggest thing going on in her life in the months, days leading up to October 4th is the status of her relationship with Daniel Youngkin. Things are not good. She is feeling unloved, undesired, ignored. I want to feel beautiful, not barely average. I want to feel loved and not just liked. I want to feel wanted, not just tolerated. Now this is a 4-minute some video. This video was filmed in August of 2022, but the evidence in terms of the text messages and her statements will show that nothing really changed between when this video was filmed, October 4th of 2022. I'm at the river now by Danny. So that's where she was at. This is her emotional state in the summer, fall of 2022. Billy Joe Howell, the defendant's mother, and Thomas Howell, her stepdad, are out of town. They're not in town. They're not in the house. They are sort of out of play. In the morning of October 4th, quite early in the morning, in fact, the defendant and Danny take the 3 children to babysitter Michelle McCarter. And it comes across more like they're almost like a second family or a substitute family for these kids. And the child care arrangement was this. At this point in time, Danny and the defendant are working at a warehouse in Port Wentworth. And their shift starts at 6 a.m. They're working the 6 a.m. shift. On the way to work, they'll drop off 3 children with Michelle. They clock in at essentially the exact same time, a little after 6 a.m. on October 4th. Now they clock out less than 2 hours later. And the reason they do that is the defendant is experiencing some kind of dental issue. She has a tooth that's bothering her and it needs to come out. And so they clock out right around 8 o'clock, just before 8 o'clock in the morning. and they go to some type of emergency dental clinic or walk-in dental clinic. And she gets a tooth pulled. These are some pictures, selfies she took of herself in the dentist chair, and you can see the side of her mouth on the left side there, I think, is kind of swollen. She sent these to Danny, who was sitting out in the waiting room waiting for her. And so after this, they do not go back to work. They go home. And the rest of the waking hours of the day are pretty normal. They get some lunch. They relax. Her mouth is bothering her. She's tired. She's sore. About 4:30 in the afternoon, they go and they pick up the 3 kids from the babysitter from the shell, and they bring them home. At that point, Danny, the defendant, and the 3 kids are in the house. Now, Paul, he worked at the same warehouse, but he worked a later shift. So same place, different shift. So he's not there in the afternoon. Now they're there, they do dinner, they do bath time, they put the kids down. Quentin in his pack and play. I think a statement from the defendant that Sky, the infant, slept on that couch that we looked at, and Zane in the race car bed. Around 10 p.m., Quentin is fine. He's just in his crib, in his pack and play for bedtime, okay? And what happens at this point sets off a chain of events that goes over the next couple hours and results in tragedy. And that is that the defendant and Daniel have yet another argument about how he's treating her. This is sometime a little after 10 p.m. And that this is something she told to detectives eventually in some of her interviews. About how he doesn't want her, he doesn't want to touch her, he's not feeling desire for her like he used to. You know, we've already talked about this is a major trigger for her. This is the biggest emotional issue going on in her life, and it's significant. It drove her to the brink in the video that you've watched. This is not a minor thing for her. And so she leaves the house after 10 p.m. on the first of 2 trips that you'll hear a lot about in this trial, and that she didn't really want to talk about, at least truthfully, with investigators. And that first trip is to the drug dealer. She says that she left so that things wouldn't escalate between her and Danny. She was upset, that's her word, so it wouldn't escalate. The first place she goes is this Circle K, and I should have pointed out that you can see her getting out of the car. So about 10:30, I'll back up. You can see her getting out of her Dodge Journey with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Then she texts Danny. He's got her saved in his phone as Lanny Baby. She texts him, I'm going to run to 204, I guess. That's at 10:32. And 204 is an area you'll hear about in this case. It's shorthand for our drug dealer. I'm going to run to our drug dealer. Screenshot of some GPS plots from her phone that the police eventually made after getting into her phone. You can see Highway 204 here. And this red blob up here is a series of GPS points showing that she's at the drug dealer's house on Arkwright Lane from about 10:45 p.m. to 10:55. And she's scoring drugs to use that night because she doesn't like the way she's feeling. While she's gone, Paul gets home. He had clocked out at 9:56 p.m. He was smoking a blunt in the parking lot or something like that. You're going to hear a lot about drug use in this case. And he gets home while the defendant is still out on this trip to the drug dealer. And he'll tell you that when he got home, he went in and said hey to Danny. And he saw the kids, he saw Quentin in his crib, in his pack and play. Quentin was fine. He even interacted with him a little bit. But he's there and he's okay. Now, by 10 after 11, she's got a bunch of GPS points hitting at the house on Buckhalter Road, and this is just to signify that this is around when she gets home. 10 after 11. Paul is upstairs in his bedroom, going to sleep, kind of secluded from the rest of the family. And Danny eventually goes to sleep as well. And you'll hear her say this to the investigators, that she was the only one up and active in the middle of the night, in the hours leading up towards 1 a.m. My tooth was hurting, I couldn't sleep. What she's doing is she's going on a bender. You'll hear her admit to this eventually with the police. She didn't want to talk about it initially, but you'll hear that she eventually acknowledged that she was up kind of frantically using drugs. You'll hear her talk about it. I would hit a line, I would go outside, I would smoke a blunt to kind of bring myself down, maybe smoke a cigarette, then I'd hit another line and repeat the cycle. So she's in her house by herself, physically uncomfortable because of her dental issue, emotionally wrecked because of what's going on with her and Danny. It's just an ever-present problem for her. And this is a bad situation. Right? This is a volatile, dangerous situation. And that's because you'll hear something that she later said during the investigation on a recorded call, on a recorded phone call to Daniel, who was cooperating with the police and trying to help them gain information about the effect that cocaine has on her. It's not just fun for her. You'll hear her say that it makes her angry and impulsive.
I love it. I love it. That's so great cooking memory. And I become angry and impulsive when I'm on it.
And so those are the conditions. She's up all alone, physically uncomfortable, emotionally unhappy, unstable to some degree. And around 1 a.m. probably, she kills Quentin. What she did and when things happened. I want you to just understand the sequence of events and what happened when. She takes his body and puts it in Dodge Journey, and she begins the cover-up. The cover-up is not just the lies to the police. The cover-up starts immediately. A little after 1 a.m., she drives down Buckhalter Road and comes into Ogeechee Road right here, and she pulls into this mobile home plaza. It's right here. Mostly what you're seeing is trees, but there are mobile homes in here. This is Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. There's a convenient stand-up dumpster sort of hidden away under some tree cover in the tree line there. And she throws Quentin's body away like a piece of trash at about 1:17 in the morning. She drives home. This is another export from her phone, showing that her phone was locked from 2:01 in the morning until 9:13 in the morning. And this is just kind of a shorthand way of saying that's roughly about the time she eventually goes to sleep. Now, Danny wakes up a little after 5, and he tries to wake her up to go to work. She's supposed to go to work with him. Remember, they work the same shift. And he cannot wake her up. She will not wake up. And he believes that all 3 children are there. He does not go over and check the packet plate. He doesn't even know that Quentin is gone. He can't wake her up to go to work, and he's annoyed by this because this is not the first time this has happened. And they are kind of tight on money. You're not going to get up and come to work and make money. We're not going to spend money on a babysitter today. And so he texts Michelle, hey, the kids are going to stay here with her today, Miss Michelle, at 5:20 in the morning. She says, okay. So he goes to work, and he clocks in at 6:11, 6 a.m. And he will clock out at 9:15, a little over 3 hours later. At 9:14, 1 minute before the clock out, he gets a call from the defendant. Now, this is a 21-minute call. He calls him, and the cover-up, initially I said, the cover-up starts with covering this up to him. Before she covered it up to the police, but before they ever even get involved, she's covering it up to Danny. She calls him and she tells him that she woke up, the front door was open, and Quentin was gone. And he would run out to his car, leave work, and come home, and stay on the line with her for 21 minutes. And this video shows him running out. That's Danny running out of work. As he's on the way home, on this call with the defendant where she's telling him she woke up and the front door was open, the security system on his house, open and closed, or just opened, or just closed, having been open. Front door didn't open until 9:22 in the morning. on October 5th. Now that's 6 minutes in, 6 or 8 minutes in to that call with Danny. And so the evidence is going to show that she's on the phone with him saying, I woke up and the front door was open, the front door was open. It's during that phone call that she's opening the front door. So you'll hear that she's essentially tampering with the scene, staging the scene to fit with her story before the police ever become involved. Danny gets home, babysitter Michelle got wind that this was going on. He comes over, Paul hears yelling, comes downstairs, and now everybody's there and they're looking for Quentin. And the defendant, of course, is the only person who knows where he actually is, and that's in a dumpster. And they call 911, and here's what the defendant says.
Get my son! Get my motherfucker outside! I'm looking over the front door so we can place it in empty, please!
Police show up a little before 10 a.m. and she repeats the same story to them. This is a missing child. So situations like this, it's all hands on deck. Everybody comes out. Forensics comes out. I think the forensics unit came out, had a drone up looking for Quentin. Patrol officers are being pulled from other beats, other areas of patrol, to canvass the area and look for Quentin in the woods, because this is a big deal. They take these things very seriously. One of the specialized units that responded after patrol officers had gotten there, John Wilkins shows up, and he's the one who conducts the first, what you call more like the first formal interview with the defendant. Most notable from that statement is when she says she went to bed and when she says she got up. And you'll hear that she tells him, I went to bed around midnight and I got up around 9. She doesn't say anything at all about this trip to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza a little after 1 a.m. She doesn't want to talk about that because that's the trip that she took to get rid of Quentin's body. There were 2 trips, 2:04 earlier in the night, 10:11. Trip number 2 is that Azalea trip, a little after 1 a.m. And she is totally omitting that. There are detectives working on this case that aren't even out at the scene from the very beginning. The flock system is a series of cameras that are set up around town at major intersections or along busy roads. And what they do is they snap a picture of the license plates of all the cars that drive by. And police can use these for a number of different things. They can take that tag number of that individual, they can put it in the flock system and put a lookout out for them. If that tag hits on any other cameras, it'll alert the police and they can try again and make the traffic stop. Another thing that the police can do, and what Detective Robbins did, was look up vehicles registered to the defendant. She finds that Dodge Journey that the defendant drove to dispose of Quentin's body, and she puts it into the flock system, looks it up in the database to see what, if any, flock cameras that vehicle has hit on anytime recently. And she sees that that car has been out late at night, driving around on trips that the defendant hasn't mentioned yet. She radios that information, or maybe calls via phone. That's the Dodge Journey in the driveway at the time of the police response. She goes up to her armed with this information about the flock hits at night. He wants to know what these trips were about. So he goes up to her and he asks her, hey, did you go anywhere last night? And he's a savvy guy, so he's careful to tack on, like where the kidnapper could have followed you home. And she seems to know, the evidence will show that she seems to know that he knows something about this trip to Azalea that she took and has not mentioned to this point. And so she comes up with a story. The story is that, that trip that I took away from my house shortly after 1 a.m., that was to go pick up Orajel from a friend at the Chevron. Now the Chevron is right next to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. They're kind of right next to each other. And so that's her story. This is what she was doing, driving to that location at that time. This is the first appearance of the Orajel story, which lasts for about a week or so. She's trying to show him on her phone this trip on an app called Life 360. Look, if this trip was so sinister in nature, why is she trying to show it to him on her phone? The Chevron and Azalea Mobile Home Plaza are right next to each other. And looking at the screen, you can't necessarily tell which one she's at. Now, the police would later pull very precise GPS data from the phone that puts her not at the Chevron, but right at the dumpsters at Azalea. So that's the first appearance of the origin story to explain the Azalea trip. And she omitted that to Wilkins, is now had to come up with a story to cover this trip.
The wife was really bothering me about almost one in the morning. They called Circle K to see if they got more jail. So I got in contact with another one of my friends named Misty that I used to work with. He has a lot of problems, and asked her if she had any origin. Let her at the Chevron. And I called her, and yeah, that moved back home. You also 12 minutes. I got it for my Life 360. I can show y'all right around everything was on the left. I was like, get back. Get home, and my mouth, check all the kids to get in there, okay.
Now, a couple things about this initial interview in which she's asked to give an account of her movements for the last 24 hours. No mention whatsoever of the trip to the drug dealer. She doesn't want to talk about what she was doing that night in the state that it put her in. So that's omitted completely from this interview. And now she's put a name to the friend who gave her the Orajel, Misty. The police asked her to go through her phone, and so she lets them go through her phone. A couple things they see is there's no call to Misty, and there's no call to Circle K to check and see if they have Orajel, which is something she said. They also see a message from the defendant to Danny. This is when she's leaving the Circle K and is about to go to the drug dealer at 10:30, gonna run to 204, I guess. This is something that she had left out in this initial interview with Snyder and Lemons. Here's what she tells him. It was a trip to the drug dealer, but it wasn't actually to buy drugs. She tells him that the reason that she left the house at 10:30 at night and went to her drug dealer and was there for 10 minutes was simply to pay off a pre-existing drug debt in the amount of $20. The evidence will show that that story is just absurd on its face. But in addition to that, the cash app was for $80, not $20. And she'll later admit that this story wasn't true.
That she returned on 204 to a meet with?
Yeah, like I'm turning on 204 now, like I'm not in need of, that's what I was trying to tell you.
And at that point, you didn't get anything.
Because after all, she tells them, other than marijuana, I don't use drugs. And the reason they're asking her whether she got a Percocet from the drug dealer that night is that they had seen some messages about buying Percocets as well when they went through her phone. Messages with you look like you're buying Percocet, using Percocet. And her story at this time is, oh, those are for a friend. I'm just the middleman. She does not want to talk about her drug use that night because that contributed directly to the state of mind that she was in and relates so closely to her killing Quentin in the middle of the night. So she feels that she has to tell these lines. And she wants to focus on 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. because after all, this is an abduction. It's not as though I did anything in the middle of the night. My child was taken after Danny left for work. That's her story, that's what she's trying to sell. October 5th, they get statements from the defendant, and she's making all these claims that we've talked about. They get a statement from Paul, they get a statement from Danny. And so they go out and there are two real notable things that happen between the October 5th statements on day one and the next interview. And one is that they do what they call a video canvas. They go out to this Chevron area where she has said that this Orajel exchange happened. They go in and they ask if there's footage. And they get footage from the Chevron, and it does not show her stopping there. In fact, it shows her driving by. And they get footage from Azalea next door. What the Azalea footage shows is her pulling in, doing a loop around the complex, and pulling up to the dumpsters and sitting there for about 2 minutes. And that's when she throws Quentin's body away. This is her driving in the Dodge Journey after 1 a.m. on a mission to throw away her dead child. And they confront her with these two findings. One, the security footage from Azalea and from Chevron. And two, what Missy has told them. And she just sticks to the Orgel story and just insists that it is true. And this is what that sounded like.
Okay, because Missy hadn't talked to you.
Yeah, she has.
She hasn't talked to you in quite some time.
Yeah, she
Yes,
has.
she did not have a conversation with you about the origin.
So that's the story on October 8th, sticking to her guns. Now, October 12th, she comes in for another interview. And she tells this kind of flowery story describing this meeting. She lavishes them with details about how this went down.
So you went to Missy's house, and did you go inside her house? She was just standing outside. How long did y'all interact there with Missy? How long did you talk?
2 minutes, just a quick little conversation. Everyone else from now feeling this one. She does some practice stuff. She did how much she was outside.
Now she adds Misty was smoking crack when she gave the defendant the Orgel. The evidence will show that she added this detail to suggest a faulty memory on Misty's part. It didn't happen. So after insisting on the 5th that she met Misty at the Chevron for Orgel, and after insisting on the 8th that that was the truth, and after insisting even at the outset of this interview that it was true, she finally admits that it wasn't true and massages the inconsistency by saying, you know, I didn't speak to her. You've asked me if I threw any trash away there. Yeah, I did throw some trash away. There's a story for what that trash was. The evidence will show she did not want to admit that it was Quentin's body, so she describes this trash that she threw away as stinky shrimp pasta that had been sitting in the car in a trash bag and smelling up the car.
The whole person was standing there. I was like, what is that smell? I felt like before I even went to go to a floor. You know? I go up there. I'm like, get out of the car. I'm like,
This is the most critical fact in the case. Throwing Quentin's body in the dumpster at Azalea, what she was doing at Azalea Mobile Home Plaza at 1:17 in the morning or so. He does not want to talk about what was in that trash bag. They also revisit the drug use, and you'll remember that the strong denials on October 5th, which are repeated on October 8th. Well, in this October 12th interview, she admits finally that I did take a Percocet that night.
And you had the Percocet in conjunction with smoking.
yes, that's what I said. As soon as I got home, I went outside and smoked a cigarette.
And
By the time
about what time would you have done that?
I got home, I took it like 11 or something.
And so Snyder asked her about her changing story. You've initially, over the course of 2 interviews, didn't mention throwing trash away. And now you've got a very detailed account about doing that and what it was. And you are adamant that you hadn't used any drugs other than marijuana. And now you're telling us that you did take a Percocet too. Why is the story changing? And her explanation for that is, oh, well, my faulty memory might have something to do with all the cocaine I was doing that night, which is a drug that had totally been absent from all of her prior accounts and fits much more with the $80 cash app than this story about paying off the drug front. October 12th, and we've come a long way from the October 5th account of only using marijuana that night. This is where we end up on October 12th. She's a regular user of cocaine, which she had denied in earlier interviews. Now, at the end of the day, the most critical thing though is what happened to Quentin. What happened to Quentin in the middle of the night. And here is what she had to say about that.
It was like, oh, no, that was a lot behind, which was the one thing, and I
something to him, but if I did, I will take responsibility. It appears to be claiming something like a lack of memory. The evidence that you'll see is going to show that when she drove to those dumpsters at Azalea to throw Quentin's body away, you can see that she's driving normally. You'll see that she comes to a complete stop at stop signs. She uses her turn signal. You'll hear evidence that the investigators could tell from her phone that she plugged her phone into the USB charger in the car when she got in. So the evidence will show that she was aware of what she was doing when she took him there, and that her claims to just not know what happened cannot be true. They do not fit with the other evidence. October 18th, police announced that they believe Quentin's body to be in a local landfill and that they're about to begin this extremely challenging needle in a haystack search of the landfill. And this is how they got there. A detective with the Chatham County Police Department goes out to the mobile home plaza and he asks what garbage truck company services these dumpsters, and they give him that information. He gets in touch with that garbage truck company, and he learns that it was truck 3909 from a company called Waste Pro. This is on the morning of October 5th, actually. Quentin wasn't in the dumpster for very long because it was emptied that day. It's a front-loading garbage truck, extends its hydraulic forks into the slots on the side of the dumpster, and drops Quentin and all the other garbage into the box in the back of the truck. There's a compactor in that truck that compacts everything, and you want that compactor in there so that the truck doesn't have to go to the landfill as frequently. Makes the garbage smaller and take more garbage. That truck went to the Waste Management Superior landfill on Little Neck Road on the morning of October 5th. And with this information, the detectives go out and talk to the landfill manager, and he's able to identify the area that garbage was being dumped and then kind of shoved to on October 5th. And this kind of general area up here, that becomes the search area. So they have kind of an idea, like a general box in the landfill of where Quentin is going to be found. But this is still an extremely difficult thing. Even if you know the general area, there's like 2 more days of trash that have since been dumped there since the 5th. And this stuff gets compacted and moved around. They drive these compactors over it that have studded metal rollers, and everything just gets shredded. At the end of the day, they have tons and tons of garbage to search through, and so they arrange the landfill search. They have some consultants from an outside agency come in and advise on this because it's a very technical thing. These consultants are able to tell, based on known rates of searching, estimate of how many people this is going to take and how much time it's going to take. They have to order specialized protective gear, steel-toed boots, Tyvek suits, respirators, gloves to put over the gloves. This is a biohazard environment. And they have to find volunteers, and this is an all-volunteer duty. Right? And for weeks, volunteers from the police department and from some other law enforcement agencies came out here early in the morning, and they do this landfill search that involves an excavator up in the search area, scooping up garbage, putting it in a dump truck. Dump truck comes down on this open area bounded by cones that they call the search deck. The excavator down here kind of spreads the garbage, that particular load, I think they were calling them lines, out onto the search deck. And these volunteers get online with rakes, and they just search through it. This is what that looks like. And they do this for days, weeks, in the heat, all that gear on. These efforts can only be described as heroic. They want to find Quentin. But that's what the police are doing while she is playing games with investigators and changing her story and changing her story again. October 24th, while the landfill search is underway, The defendant is still playing games. This is October 24th, that's 19 days. And after several interviews where her story has just been shot to pieces, she does this interview where she holds herself out as the victim of a child abduction, still on that, and has the gall to make an appeal to the public to just please bring Quentin home safe. And the evidence will show that she knows he's not safe. And she knows he's not coming home. She sends this text message to Savannah Solomon of the FBI. And this is just the latest Hail Mary. After all the statements about going to the Chevron and then going to Azalea and what she was doing there, and I was actually throwing away trash and not Quentin, October 24th, the same day as that news interview, she and Danny are split. And so now's the perfect time to try to put it on Danny. I'm not lying for Danny anymore. The reason why my story about Oragel and shit didn't make sense was because Danny told me to say that he was the one who left, and my phone was in the car from my previous trip. And the reason she took the video, the evidence will show that it was clearly not true. It was a desperate attempt to just try something new. November 18th, it's a memorable day for the people who are involved in this landfill search, because they find Quentin, and he's not in good shape. Okay, they find him in pieces. Mostly bones, a foot. It's not as though he's in one place on that search deck. They're finding bones in different lines, spread out. He's torn apart. They send Quentin's remains up to the FBI lab at Quantico, Virginia, where DNA analysis is done. They confirm what everybody already knew, is that this is Quentin. And the defendant comes in for one last interview. When they found Quentin after tracing the trash and making it undeniable that what she was throwing away in that dumpster at Azalea was her son's body, the best she could do in her last interview is to claim a total and complete lack of memory from seeing him in his pack and play at 10-something to snapping back into consciousness on the way home from Azalea. Now, she just can't remember anything that happened during the critical time period in this case. The murder and the disposal of the body. What will the trial look like? Trial's not like an opening statement. All right, we bring witnesses in one at a time. It can be kind of disjointed and choppy because each individual comes in and they can only talk about really their role and what they did, heard, saw, that sort of thing. You'll hear from the investigators who took these statements and followed up on them. You'll hear from some of the people who were involved in this search of the landfill. You'll hear from some of the scientists at Quantico who were tasked with identifying Quentin and seeing what they could make of these remains, which are just totally torn apart. What I do not expect you will hear is exactly how the defendant killed Quentin. And that's because she covered it up. It's because she got rid of the body. All right, the evidence will show that her specific intent from the outset was that he never be found at all. And him being found in pieces, little bitty pieces, was the next best thing. The judge will tell you that in a case like this, we do not have to prove exactly how the defendant killed Quentin. Under these circumstances, how could you? And that is a sensible rule. Because what we have to prove, what is important, is not exactly how she killed him, but that she killed him. The fact that she did it. And the evidence that we will present to you will do that. It will do that, beyond a reasonable doubt. So at the end of the case, when all the evidence is in, we will make our closing arguments, and we will ask you to find her guilty of all of the charges in the indictment.
So as I told you, we're doing everything we can. We're looking at every feasible possible, angle. And I know you talked a little bit about, using drugs, using marijuana. So last night, was there any chance that you were having some issues with your wisdom teeth and needed to go get something to ease the pain last night?
I did. I went and I got Orajel. That was right up there. I met her like at the end of Buckhalter Road, a friend of mine, because I don't have money to go and get some expensive over-the-counter. I don't have it.
And what time was it?
That was like, I got home at 1:25 a.m.
1:25.
I was gone for 12 minutes. You go on like for 6 people. Got it right there.
There's some text messages in your phone. You guys can take a look at the phone.
Yeah.
I took the phone. And there's a message in there. It's an outgoing message from you that says turning on 204. And that's at 10:40.
Yeah.
10:40 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't talk about that before. So what? 10:40 p.m. Where were you at 10:40 p.m.?
If I was turning on 204, I was probably going to go pay back or something. Pay back front from him. To be honest with you, I was going to go pay back the $20 front for him.
For who?
For Danny. Daniel, that's who King is. That's Danny. Whatever. He owed $20 a week. I want to pay it back. Whatever. But
See,
he was awake at that time. He was up. He was awake at that time. Quentin had just went to sleep. He had stopped all the crying and all that stuff. And that's why I left, because he went to sleep at 10:30. And it only takes him 12 minutes to get to 204, if he takes 16.
So that would have been important for us to know before. So that's what we have to understand everything. And you just, you have to be kind of open book.
I wasn't
good or bad.
Yeah, it's not like I was trying to keep it. I'm trying to replay everything over and over, and I've been doing it all day. All day. I forgot about that. That was not on my mind. My mind is, this is where I...
The door that you mentioned as having been walled off and not operational, that's behind the projector screen.
Yes, sir.
And then 30, where are we here?
That is the pack and play that I mentioned earlier.
31,
The pillow inside the pack and play.
and 32.
Again, the pillow inside the pack and play.
Now I'm going to zoom in on this picture a little bit. Do you see that substance there?
Yes, sir.
Did you get a good look at it while you were out there?
I did, sir.
And what, if anything, did it appear to you to be?
I believed it to be vomit.
Okay. Did it appear to be blood?
It didn't.
Okay.
It's a lot redder in that picture than it actually was.
You're saying it's appearing redder on the screen than
Yes, sir.
than it actually was when you were out there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did not appear to be blood to you?
No.
Did you do any testing at any point to determine whether it was blood?
I did not.
33, another picture of the same.
Another picture. The blanket is out because we searched the pack and play after
Okay.
the picture.
Now, let me actually go back. Okay, so in 34, where is that pink blanket?
Or on 34, it's on the, I guess you call it the rail at the side.
Okay. Now I want to go back to, pardon me, to 31. I'm on 31. Where's the pink blanket in this picture?
It's inside the pack and play on the pad.
All right, so we've got some pictures where the pink blanket is in the pack and play and some where it's on the rail.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us when it was moved and why?
It was moved due to, or I guess it was moved when we were looking for, see if there's any blood on the inside the pack and play.
Okay,
And
so,
then we just moved it to look at the blanket itself and to look at the mat.
okay, thank you. Did you have gloves on when you did that?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to 35, just another view of the pack and play after the blanket had been moved.
Yes, sir.
36, same.
Same.
All right, 37, where are we here?
My back is towards the pack and play, and I'm looking towards the bed in the far left corner.
Okay, so you're essentially standing at the pack and play here?
Yes, sir.
38,
38, I just pan left, same spot.
39,
39, pan left. You can see the front door in the left side, the couch, and then there's a safe and a projector on the window back there.
40,
40, at the desk, looking towards the front door. You can see the street in the background.
41,
I have pan left, front doors on the right, pack and play, and the projector screen. Continue moving to the left.
43,
Oh, sorry. Pan to the left even more. Kid's bed and the closet door.
44,
Just continue panning.
and 45, what are we looking at now?
45, that's the, I guess, the entrance into the rest of the house. That's the bathroom right there. You can see the dresser right there on the left-hand side.
All right, and then what is this through that door that I'm,
Just a little storage cabinet.
all right, that's inside the bathroom?
Yes, sir.
46,
Pan to the left a little bit more. You can see the bed now and the dresser.
and 47.
Just a view of the bed.
All right, 48, where are we?
48, I am by the bed and the dresser looking into the bathroom.
49,
Starting to take photographs into the bathroom. This is the little storage cabinet from the previous photos.
and is that on your left as you walk in?
Yes, sir.
50,
Sink and a mirror.
and 54.
54, this is above the toilet. The toilet's at the bottom. And then you got a little storage shelf.
Now, I'd like to zoom in on this storage shelf here. See that little bottle with the blue, red, and yellow label? What is that?
Ambisol.
Do you know what Anbesol is?
It's a oral pain relief.
Okay, so something like a liquid you rub on your gums or teeth to relieve dental pain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now 55, where are we here?
55, we're at in the bathroom, looking into the dining room.
Now, this is image 30 from State's Exhibit 10. Is this the pack and play that you're describing, looking at?
Yes.
You said it was covered in stains. Can you point us to any of those in this image?
So, I mean, there's some on the lip right here that I could see, and then on the actual bedding, there were several stains.
Okay, so all this stuff around the edge there, did that appear to you to just be kind of general grime and dirtiness?
Yes.
Did it appear to you to be blood?
No, I was thinking more like Cheeto fingers and the kid touching the side.
Okay, as someone who was actually in the room and looked at it, that's what it looked like to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is image 32 from State's Exhibit 10, and Officer Schenker, I think, said it appears redder on the screen than it appeared in the residence. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah, may I publish the paper version for the jury just by kind of doing a little Van and White here?
Yes.
And actually, pass that around. Just to be clear, did this substance appear to you to be blood?
No.
You said it looked like vomit?
It smelled like vomit, yeah.
Now, I would like to play for you a brief portion of what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit 2 and identified as Sergeant Bobby Stewart's body-worn camera footage. Was your observation of the pack and play captured on his body-worn camera?
It was.
And did you make any statements while looking at it, at the pack and play, about what it smelled like?
Yes, I immediately said it smelled like vomit.
Smelled like vomit? I'm trying to get just right to the right spot here.
Is that the exhibit? Is that the exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, you can hand that back to the state's table.
Okay. It's not mine anymore, John. It belongs to the clerk, so I'll bring it back up.
All right, thank you.
All right. This is State's Exhibit 2, correct?
I'm not sure on the number, but I do remember seeing it.
Okay. In any case, what's the timestamp in the top right corner?
It is 12/31/20.
All right, what are we going to hear you say in this bit that we're going to play?
That it smells like vomit.
I can't stand the smell, so I'm staying out here. They got them on the back porch, they're not in the house.
It smells like vomit.
All right, I've stopped the playback at 12:31:50 on the timestamp in the top right corner of State's Exhibit 2. Did you see anything that looked like blood in the residence that night?
No.
Now, in State's Exhibit 3, Slide 27. What time are we at here?
This is 12:43:12.
And is that you on the far right?
It is.
And who are you talking to here?
I'm talking to Captain Wright, who's in the green shirt with the investigations unit, Captain Fandrich, Lieutenant Thompson, and Lieutenant Foster.
And what is going on at this time?
I'm informing them of our game plan, which was to move Daniel Youngkin, Paul Simon, and Leilani Simon to our main precinct for interviews.
Okay. And did that happen shortly after this exchange?
It did.
Okay. How was that arranged logistically?
Some of the patrol officers on scene drove the adults over.
And did they all agree to go in?
They did.
Now, where did you all go? I know you've mentioned it by some kind of shorthand.
Yep.
The precinct or something like that. But can you describe it in a little more detail where this place is and what it is?
It's the Chatham County Police Headquarters on Chatham Parkway at 295 Police Memorial.
And why did you all want to go there?
So we had people showing up on scene, just more patrol officers, more search parties, and then some of the family members were also showing up, and we wanted to take the people that were living at the residence at the time that this occurred and get thorough interviews with each one of them.
Now, before we leave the scene, I want to ask you about what happened to the pillow and pillowcase and the pack and play that we were just looking at. I believe Officer Schenker testified that that was taken into evidence.
Yes.
And was the entire pack and play taken as well?
Yes.
Okay.